Ever since the Apollo program ended, humans have been aching to return to our beautiful satellite. However, humans haven't set foot on the moon for almost half a century now. We've oftentimes dreamed of returning to the first checkpoint of the final frontier. However, due to our limited technology, we simply weren't able to return to our planet's satellite. Well, the tides have finally changed, and humans will, after a 50-year-long hiatus, be returning to the moon. NASA's Artemis program will bring humans back to the moon and will also open up a completely new horizon. But unlike the previous missions, the upcoming ones are planned to serve a real and practical purpose, and that is actually moon mining. By mining resources from the moon, we'll be doing our planet a favor and will inherently save it from its eventual premature demise. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at how will mining the moon save the Earth. So be sure to stick with us to see the details on the upcoming moon mining project. To better understand the scale and the history of moon mining, we'll have to ask ourselves, when did this idea actually come into fruition? Lunar mining isn't exactly a new idea. Ever since the first humans were sent to space back in the mid-20th century, humans were planning on exploring and exploiting different planets. The moon itself was our first goal, as it was both the closest to Earth and was projected to have varied amounts of minerals and elements that could be utilized by humans. Unfortunately, these plans have quickly faded away due to our own inability to reliably navigate to our own satellite, let alone something considerably further away. After the Apollo 13 mission showed how hazardous and problematic flying to the moon might be, excavating its minerals and rare elements were quickly forgotten because we lacked the proper mechanization to mine it. Not to mention that transporting it back to Earth was absolutely impossible. Well, after almost 50 years, moon mining as an idea has finally resurfaced, and this time it'll actually be viable. With considerably more reliable rockets and an already well-developed way of reusing and landing said rockets, transporting materials and ores from the moon back to Earth will be considerably more economical. Not to mention that the mining technology has also advanced significantly, and it can now be properly adapted to the moon's atmospheric and gravitational conditions. Why is lunar mining so important? Lunar mining is extremely important, not because of the fact that we'll be bringing the resources back to Earth, albeit that in itself is a very good reason. Lunar resources are space resources, and these resources will primarily be utilized in space. The key reasons for moon mining will be the acquiry of helium-3 isotope. The helium-3 isotope is extremely rare on Earth. However, it's believed that it is extremely plentiful on the moon. Some estimates state that there will be hundreds of millions of tons of the isotope. Helium-3 is extremely important for the future of space exploration, as the isotope can be used as a propellant for rocket ships. In fact, not only can it be used as fuel, but it's also currently the best fuel for that occasion, as it is completely radiation-free and also nearly completely emission-free. So, in essence, we'll have no radioactive waste when using rockets, which is one of the biggest problems of rocket development and testing. This essentially means that humans will have access to highly desired rocket propellant in abundance, which will further allow and encourage space exploration. However, apart from the helium-3 isotope, the moon is also filled with numerous minerals and ores that are very scarce, but very important on Earth. For example, scandium and yttrium are expected to be extremely plentiful. Both of these materials can be used for phones, computers, and many different appliances. Apart from this, the moon also has large amounts of titanium, aluminum, and calcium, all of which are used constantly on Earth for virtually everything. This means that we can lower the mining activity on our own planet, which would do wonders for both us and nature itself, as mining is, to this day, one of the larger polluters of the world. But all is not fun and games, as there are a couple of problems that arise from lunar mining. What are the challenges that arise from mining the moon? The moon itself presents countless challenges that aren't found on Earth. The first one is the low-gravity environment which is present on the moon. It will prove to be one of the most difficult tasks to tackle, as the equipment that'll be used on the moon will need to be specifically developed to perform that task. Second of all, the radiation is extremely high on the moon. The sun is extremely toxic to humans at the moon's surface, which means that human presence on Earth's satellite will be extremely limited. Next up is the terrain. The moon's surface is extremely problematic and unforgiving. While it's not as big of a problem as, say, Mars, the surface is still very uneven and incredibly hard to tackle, especially with the current technology. Combine the terrain with the weak gravity of the moon, and you'll see how big of a problem NASA is facing. Plus, consider the lack of any infrastructure at the moment. Creating self-sustained mines and operations will be impossible. Another big problem is the fact that there is a law that currently prohibits the moon's resources to be mined. The law in question is the 1967 UN Outer Space Treaty, which states that the moon, alongside other space objects, cannot be claimed by a single country. This means that NASA currently can't mine anything on the surface of the moon, as by doing so, they'd be breaking one of the most important conventions that concerns space exploration. So, with these problems in mind, a question arises: how will moon mining function? Despite NASA pushing for the further development of space mining, moon mining won't be carried out by NASA. Rather, it'll be carried out by private contractors and companies. The private sector has become a true force to be reckoned with in the past few decades. Just look at SpaceX. They're literally almost on the same level as NASA. Anyway, by doing so, NASA will technically avoid the treaty without breaking it. However, since the US never really recognized the treaty as valid, it's possible that NASA might eventually have a hand in mining the moon too, despite what the UN says. Numerous private companies are already preparing for moon mining on Earth. They are creating simulations of the moon's gravitation and atmosphere, and are specifically creating and modifying the equipment that will best suit the needs for mining on the moon. As of the moment, there have only been speculation of what kind of gear will these companies use, and the mining technique and processes remain unknown. However, as of now, the public has been informed that the development of said technologies is going according to plan. When it comes down to the sheer scale, it's possible that the moon will be turned into a massive industrial complex. NASA currently plans on building the first lunar base in the next 5 years. This lunar base will serve as the starting point for the mining and industrial expansion on the moon. After the base gets established, the aforementioned private companies will roll out their, by that time, developed equipment. Finally, the radiation part will be done using robots. The mining itself won't be performed by humans. Instead, most of the labor will be done remotely from Earth by controlling specifically designed robots and vehicles. These robots are already well in development. However, they still aren't fully operational or ready to be rolled out, which leads us to the most important question of the video. How long till we start mining the moon? Even though lunar mining is still in its infancy, we're actually very close to the first steps of preparing the moon for mineral mining. According to NASA, the very first steps of the aforementioned lunar base construction will happen after the upcoming Artemis 3 landing, which is expected to happen in 2025 or 2026. On the other hand, the companies that are developing the necessary equipment are also confirming that by the time the base is operational, the equipment for mining will have been developed. This means that the window for the start of moon mining will be between 5 and 10 years from now. In our opinion, construction and rollout of equipment will happen somewhere around 2030. Testing will start soon after, and actual mining will begin a year or two later. Hopefully, there won't be any complications with the development and rollout of the equipment. However, concerning the extremely complex nature of the entire project, it is possible that there will be further delays. However, while we're waiting for further updates on the development of lunar mining, we should definitely focus on the recently announced development of the aforementioned NASA lunar base. If you'd like to learn more about it, be sure to check out this video.